Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Herold here on Badlands Media. I'm your host, Jon Herold, and very excited about today's show because I got Representative Cloud, and he is joining. He'll be on here in about 15 minutes or so, and we've been playing a little hard to get with each other, a little back and forth, but he's going to be joining. I got some good questions for him, so looking forward to that. That again will be in about 15 minutes. Plenty of other stuff to discuss today. We are going to get a quick word from our sponsor of today's show, and we'll get right to it. We have Pet Club 247. Experience the miracle of a God-given first responder for your health and an ally in your body that fights everything from minor ailments to major health threats. That ally is your immune system. At Pet Club 247, we harness the ancient wisdom of nature with our exclusive potent strain of medicinal mushrooms, revered for thousands of years for their immune-supporting properties that are extremely safe with no additions or overdoses, no side effects, and no interactions with medications. Transform how you manage health with our all-natural products and help Pet Club change the world one pet and one person at a time. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/petclub now to explore how we're redefining wellness for both pets and people. That's badlandsmedia.tv/petclub, treating pets and their parents better. All right. How is the chat doing? Hard open. Everything's a hard open here. Yeah, Rep Cloud. He'll be here in about 10 minutes, but we're going to cruise through some of the news because there's quite a bit going on. And I'm going to try to get through it all fast enough to have Ash join me at the very end, too, to discuss the Tina Peters thing. So let's do this. We have no update from the Doge website as of today. It hasn't been updated since May 3rd, so probably next week is when we can expect it next. This is probably one of the bigger developments, over the last few hours or a few days. Bessent and Chinese officials are going to be meeting to speak in Switzerland for trade talks. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer are set to meet with senior Chinese officials in Switzerland this weekend to address ongoing economic and trade tensions between the two countries. The high-level discussions follow President Trump's decision to impose the tariffs. I mean, we've been talking about the tariffs for a while. We're at 145% on Chinese goods, and they have it at 125 or something on us. Bessent noted that expectations for a comprehensive trade deal were premature. My sense is that this will be about de-escalation, not about the big trade deal, but we've got to de-escalate before we can move forward. China signaled a cautious willingness to engage, citing global expectations and concerns from U.S. industry and consumers. China's decided to re-engage the U.S., read an official statement, while also warning if U.S. says one thing but does another, or attempts to use talks as a cover to continue coercion and blackmail, China will never agree. During their stay in Switzerland, Bessent and Greer are also expected to meet with Swiss President Karen Keller-Sutter. And this was the Twitter post that came out yesterday where the Chinese embassy in the United States said that they're ready to do, bend the knee essentially. And this is what it says. Based on full consideration of global expectations, China's interests, and the appeals of U.S. business community and consumers, China has decided to agree to engage with the U.S. side. So just kind of funny how they frame this. It's like, for every reason other than the Trump administration, we're going to come to the table and talk to the U.S. It was everybody else but them. As China's lead on China-U.S. economic and trade affairs, Vice Premier He Lifeng will hold talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent during his visit to Switzerland from May 9th to the 12th. There we go. I think we got Congressman in the background. I don't know if he's ready here. Are you ready? I don't think he's got his earpiece in. So as soon as he gets his ear stuff in, we'll bring him on. He's just getting ready in the background now. So if anybody has any burning questions for Congressman Cloud, let me know in the chat. But I got a few good ones here. Are you ready, Representative in the background there? I don't think so. Sorry, guys. I just don't think he is. Are you ready? Sorry for this, the awkward pause. You ready, Congressman Cloud? Good. Representative Michael Cloud, how are you doing? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Daily Herold, and welcome to Badlands Media.
Thank you.
I know I got you for a pretty strict 10 minutes, and I got a few questions I want to burn through real quick. So,
okay, sounds good.
A lot of it's gonna have to do with what Trump is doing, what Congress is doing. So, December 2020, you were one of the 126 Republican members of the House of Representatives to sign that amicus brief, Texas v. Pennsylvania, one where we didn't have standing, having to do with the election results in 2020. And I personally do not think we've done enough to fix our elections. And here's how you feel about that. And Trump has that executive order, but we haven't really seen any movement. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on our elections as they stand now, with the elections of 2024 and moving forward.
Yeah, the battleground's mostly been in the states, and certain states have, generally speaking, we've gotten better. Obviously, the RNC stepped up in this last one as well to make sure some of the shenanigans were kept at bay. Obviously, there still was an attempt to have some of the shenanigans happen, but kind of squash that. Really, the big thing Congress needs to do is pass the SAVE Act. And, this is an 80-90% issue in our country, that U.S. citizens should be electing the representatives. This isn't controversial. The only place this is controversial and is, in the halls of Congress and the political establishment who, may lose power over American citizens having their voice heard.
Yeah. So what do you think the solution there is? Because the way I see it, it's the elected representatives are the ones that we're relying on to enact this legislation to fix our elections, but they're the primary beneficiaries of those said fraudulent elections. So like what gives there?
Yeah, exactly. I think we should be putting the SAVE Act really on any sort of must pass legislation and just let that be the American. Are you going to vote against that bill? And if so, that's something the American people should know about.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that's going to get movement, though?
We've passed it in the House, and so really the key is getting it through the Senate. And so what we could do to make that happen, anything we could do. We tried to get it attached to some of the funding bills, the CRs and those kind of things, to really force the issue. Like, are you willing to shut down the government in order to allow non-citizens to vote? Is kind of the question we should have been able to pose, that I would have liked to seen us pose. Hopefully we'll, continue to look for opportunities like that and continue to push for that to happen.
Yeah. And when push comes to shove, I mean, we've been in that situation a few times now, and it feels like we're heading towards that again. And one side always caves, and there is this weird feeling from Congress. I don't know if you feel it too, but I know, watching everything on a day-to-day basis, it kind of feels like there's not much happening. Like not much is being done. Like we had the Lake and Riley Act, and I was trying to go through my head, like what else has been passed into law? Like even when you guys do pass stuff, it dies in the Senate. It just feels like there's not much happening to support Trump's effort from the executive side, from Congress, and so do you feel that too?
Generally speaking, I agree with that sentiment. I wish we were doing more in Congress. I'll say more is being done than people know, in the sense that there is a bunch of wrangling going on and negotiations, and we're trying to get through the reconciliation process, the one big beautiful bill. So there is focus on the big objectives that we need to accomplish this year in the sense of the reconciliation project and process. And then the president just put out his budget, which will lead to the appropriations process and the funding for next year's government, which would be we need it to be a course correction. We need to reset the baselines of spending. We need to change what is the norms of continual government growing and growing and growing at astronomical. So there is work being done on those big items. We need to make sure that we get the good conservative wins in that when it comes to, course correction again, and restructuring what is how we're spending money and making sure we're getting ROI, taking the lessons from Doge, for example, and making sure that doesn't free up cap space to do more frivolous things, but we actually take, where there was frivolous spending, we should see a reduction in spending. And so we need to make sure that happens. So there is work being done on that, But when it comes to what's going on the floor, some of the bills or reports that are going on suspension calendar, and so we have a lot of reports already. Many of them, I wonder how many of them that get read. So things that we could be doing. One of the bills I introduced early on was right now the CBO doesn't count interest, for example. So they'll come out and give us a score on an item, but they don't. Every dollar we spend is borrowed right now. So we should be counting the cost of interest. It doesn't even get counted. So there's a lot of, even beyond those big picture items, things that we could be doing that are at a next level that could move the ball forward on some items that, CBO reform really could have been great, and they're the ones that, even as we go into reconciliation, are kind of defining the process in the sense of they're scoring everything, and we're relying in large part on their scores on how that reconciliations process, but they've been wrong on a lot of things in the past. And so we could have had a whole month of just CBO reform legislation to make sure that they had guardrails in check. And, for us, this is a unique window of opportunity. And we see the Trump administration from an executive standpoint hitting on all cylinders in a sense. You go around that cabinet room and everybody has something being done. And so we need to see that in Congress as well, where we're having a broad-based approach on fixing as many issues as we can.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I see the same thing. It is a window of opportunity, and I would argue it's our last window of opportunity, that if with Trump in there, if we don't fix our elections, fix our budget, fix our spending, like there's so many different things. If we don't do that now, are we ever going to have this kind of opportunity again? And in a lot of ways, it feels like the congressional and the judicial, the other branches of our government, are trying to impede and slow walk the Trump side of things.
Very much so.
And so how do we overcome that? Like, what is the solution to overcome this, to make sure that we get the changes and reforms that we actually need?
Yeah, obviously it's going to take some strong leadership in the House. We're working, in our office to constantly push us to move in this agenda. And exactly as you said, when we were coming into the election, the thing that I and many people talk about is the fact we have 18 months to save the country, right? This is a unique window of opportunity, and many existential threats, from where our military is to what our energy policy was to where we are in a fiscal situation. We've got to change course, make sure we strengthen our economy, we strengthen the dollar, we make it work for strong middle class, we bring manufacturing back. I mean, all these are at a point to where they're an existential issue. And so we've got to move them forward, and securing our elections is certainly a big part of that. And, this is why I'm for us going big and going bold. I've constantly been trying to advocate here in Congress for you have to go big and bold early, so that the people can see the results of it by the time the election cycle rolls around. Because anytime you make change, there's a, in our personal lives or in any organizational life, you go through a period of pain, in a sense, or restructuring or organizing before you begin to see the benefits of it. So you got to go big, you got to go bold quickly in order to see it. And I'm constantly asking us, like, do we believe in what we believe as much as the left believes in what they believe? Because we see them go big and bold and do things that are pretty outlandish. And of course they we've seen them tip over into corruption and extra constitutional things. And we shouldn't go that, obviously, but we should believe in what's right and what's righteous in the Constitution enough to boldly and advance it at every single opportunity.
Yeah, but do you think we have the proper leadership in Congress to do that? I mean, I'm even looking at what's going on in the Senate right now with Tillis and him not supporting Martin for the district attorney, and it's like, why is he even on that committee anymore? Thune should remove him, in my opinion, and so we can get him through. But one guy coming out here and he admits that he's qualified, he'd be elected in any other district, but not this one. It's these people that ride the coattails of Trump and MAGA, of this movement. They get in there, and then they don't actually implement the agenda. They're part of the establishment. They're part of the rhinos. And again, it comes down to our elections. These people benefit from those fraudulent elections. And I don't know how we get over that hump. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I said it in a committee hearing yesterday on a different topic, but it's true. I think Albert Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the same kind of thinking you used when you created it. And so many of the same people who created the problems are still in powerful positions of authority and positions, and some of it's at the staff level, to be honest, who are working through. And we either need a complete change of thinking, or we need a change of people. But we've got to continue to push these things in every way we can. And elections are a big part of it. From an oversight perspective, we can continue to bring light as to what's going on. The SAVE Act would do a whole lot to fix what's going on, from a federal standpoint. What you don't want is a complete federal takeover of elections, because that will backfire in the long run. But certainly we can set a standard. And certainly this is something that the American people totally and completely support. So the minimum of what we can do is to force a vote on it, and so that the American people have a clear objective, or at a minimum, they would have a clear understanding where people stand. But I have a feeling when it comes down to, if you have a choice like ensure that citizens are voting and fund the government or not, I'd like to think we'd get the votes on that.
Yeah, and this is where there's the us people, like people watching the show, we feel like we aren't actually represented, because, like you just said, there's major massive support for election reform in this country. Yet when it comes down to it, the people that are supposed to be representing us in Congress, they're not actually implementing those changes. And it's like these people don't listen to their constituents, yet they benefit from the fraudulent elections. And so at some point, like, again, it's I don't know what the answer is. And I don't think Congress has the answer, because I think Congress is part of the problem. And so it's just this weird, it's just this almost awkward tension going on. And we're also seeing it from the judiciary. And this is another question I wanted to ask before I let you go here. Trump had a Truth Social post today. Our court system is not letting me do the job I was elected to do. Activist, like, he's basically asking for permission. Like, please, courts, let me do my job. And I know you guys passed the Judges Act, I think, in the House, died in the Senate, or hasn't gone anywhere in the Senate. Like, these courts derive their authority from Congress.
Yeah, exactly.
Courts are overstepping their authority. Right. And like, does Trump even have to listen to the courts when they're overstepping their authority? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the only court system that was constitutional in this, or the only court that's constitutional, is the Supreme Court. They're in the Constitution. The rest of these courts are created by Congress, and Congress has a number of things we could do. We can impeach judges. We could defund courts. There's also, there's an assumption that these judges are appointed for a lifetime, and that's not the case. They're appointed for good behavior. And Congress can come and define what good behavior is, or maybe whether a judge is in good behavior or not, operating outside of the Constitution. And especially when it comes to these district judges who think that the president has to run his policy by them, in a sense, it's the mandate's in the title. In a sense, it's a district judge. It's not a national judge. You do not have the power or authority to tell the president what to do in executive manners. One of the things I quote all the time is Federalist 78, where essentially it says that the executive, because what we're taught in school is that you have three equal branches of government. And while there is a checks and a balance, the founders didn't communicate it that way. They said there's the congressional, there's Congress, the legislative branch, then you have the executive who does the will of Congress, and then you have the judiciary branch, what they said was the weakest branch. And so Federalist 78 basically says that Congress writes the laws, and the executive branch carries the sword. And so you have the purse and the sword, and that the courts have no powers, what it said, over the purse or the sword.
Neither force nor will.
Right. And so this notion that they can continue to do this, and it goes back to what you were saying, the Dems are great about managing the clock. And for example, the student loan thing was one of those things. It's not that they thought they were doing was what they thought was doing was legal. It's the fact that they could get the money out the door quick enough in order to do what they want before justice came to bear in that situation. Today I was just in a hearing with the Secretary of Energy, and he noted how for the 15 years of the department's existence, they had put out something like $40 billion of loans. And in the last 70 days, it was 100. And the loans they wrote was missing all kinds of accountability provisions that any sort of loan guarantee would. This is the kind of malfeasance that we've seen out of the left, but they do everything they can to manage the clock. They did it during Trump administration. They try to drag their feet. Thankfully, the administration is much more savvy to it, and we have people in place who realize the battle that we're in. And sometimes I feel like Republicans are fighting the battle of yesteryear. You hear about Reagan and Tip O'Neill, and that was all great and wonderful and for that time. But we have to realize that we're not in that situation right now. And maybe one day we'll get there at a country. But when you have people who are willing to do that kind of level of corruption, that kind of malfeasance, and what we've uncovered with Doge, literally evil and terrorist organizations being funded around the world with U.S. taxpayer dollars, taxpayers forced to pay for the demise of their own country. This isn't the Reagan Tip O'Neill. It's time to crush evil and make sure that we restore this country.
Yeah, I have two more questions for you. One, going back to Federalist 78, because that is one of my favorites. And this is kind of where I was going with that question earlier, because there's a quote in there that like the judiciary must ultimately depend on the executive arm for the efficacy of its judgments. So if Trump and the executive branch is not in agreement with the judiciary, like they have no enforcement mechanism. So what are they going to do?
Exactly. Yeah, they have no enforcement mechanism. So on these notions where they're trying to tell the executive who he can deport and who he can't, and you're going to bring somebody back from another country and all those kind of things, it really carries absolutely no weight. And it was really concerning for me to see the Chief Justice come and try to scold President Trump, especially when you consider how much malfeasance has gone on in the judiciary. It was really for me one of those get the plank out of your own eye before you get the speck out of someone else's eye moments, where the judiciary has a lot to work on. I mean, we've seen the bar disbarring people, and just because they were going to represent the president in different states, and just all this kind of craziness going on that isn't bringing justice to people. And so there's a lot of work to be done.
Okay, and so last question for you. You were speaking of malfeasance and the corruption of the government and this wasteful spending and everything. Why should Americans be paying taxes, seeing how this is what happens? Like, that's a genuine question and thought I go through on a day-to-day basis. Like, why am I paying my taxes when I just see it go out the door to foreign wars and NGOs and all this stuff?
Yeah, well, the last thing you're going to hear me come on a podcast and say is don't pay your taxes. Pay your taxes, but be engaged in the process and be engaged. Make sure that we know what the money's going to, and that's what we're doing with Doge. I'm about to go to a Doge committee hearing where we're working through this process and through oversight capabilities and everything that we need to do in appropriations. I mean, all the work of Congress is supposed to be getting in the details of this. And for far too long, we've let politicians measure their personal worth and the effectiveness of a department or a program by how much money we spend it, as if it was my personal checkbook. Where else do we get away with people like, oh, thank you so much, you gave someone else's money to someone else, and it's bestowed on them as an act of generosity? It's not. It's our job to manage someone else's money to make sure we're turning a good ROI for that. And we got, thankfully, a lot has come to light in the last few months, and so there is good things happening. We do want to see things moving faster, of course, but if you get discouraged, just think where we were 4 months ago, and we are turning the ship a bit. I'm not making excuses by any means. We need to run harder and faster, but let's stay at it. Let's stay focused. Pay your taxes and work with us to make it as little as we can.
Sorry for putting you on the spot there and putting you through the grinder, but
I pay taxes too, so I get. I mean, it's to me unnerving, because what we've had from the elite is the managed decline of America, and on the backs of the American taxpayer. And they're working hard. It's not the elites who, when we embrace stupid energy policy, it's not the elites who are wondering how to make ends meet. It's the middle class who are, how do I put gas in my car now? I can't afford electric car. Just all the crazy stuff that's going on. And so really it's our job in Congress to remember who we're working for in all these policy issues, and making sure that it's not our personal charity bank. It's not even a question of whether this is a nice or a good thing to do. It's is this necessary? We're supposed to have a very limited framework as defined by the Constitution for what we do, and to leave everything else to the other institutions, families, organizations, and so everything we can to get back to that, to a very streamlined government is where we need to go. And to that point, I applaud the president for his budget. It's a great first step in again course correcting, which we desperately need.
Yeah. Okay. I lied. I have one more quick question. What is the best way you guys respond to your constituents? Like, is it phone calls? Is it emails? Like, how, if I'm a big believer in getting community involvement, and like what's the best way people can get their congressman to respond to their wishes?
Sure. I'm going to give you the honest answer here. Yes, call. Yes, send an email or write a letter. But I will tell you, it doesn't have to be 5 pages long. It doesn't need to be a dissertation on the topic. We represent, each of us, hundreds of thousands, 700, 800,000 people, and get thousands of letters. And so we read them. We try to respond to everyone we can in our office. But the important thing is to have your voice be heard, so make sure it's in there. It's stated clearly. It'll also save you some time, but do be engaged in the process. But again, don't feel like it has to be a 6-page dissertation on a particular issue, which should actually be hopefully a motivating factor for people getting involved and engaged.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and sorry for the tough questions, but
no, that's quite
all
right.
Like need to be asked. Appreciate you, and
sure thing.
And keep working hard.
Will do. Thanks so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
God bless you.
All right. That was my first interview with a congressman, and I enjoyed it. I like Cloud. He seems genuine to me. Anybody in government who's genuine is in a tough spot, because there's so many others in Congress who aren't genuine. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was a fun one. We'll post some clips later and whatnot, and you guys can help share those around. I was not planning to ask him whether or not we should pay taxes, but in the moment I felt the spirit of G take over me, G money, and I felt I needed to. So there we go. Anyway, we're about half an hour, and I was only supposed to have 10 minutes, and I think I had him for like 20. I just kept asking. So he never left, is what it is. I'm gonna play this Senator Tillis video, because this is crazy to me. We played it last night, but I got to play it again on this show.
He is, I don't believe he's being advanced to the markup. I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th. And he built a compelling case on some of the 15, 12 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions. But where we probably have a difference is, I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time. Whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable, but I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th, and that's probably where most of the friction was.
I see. So he disagreed with you on that?
Well, no, I have to say that Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining how there were people that probably got caught up in it, but they made the stupid decision to come through a building that had been breached, and that the police officers and others were saying, stay away. So the difference wasn't that they should be charged, in my estimation, it's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people to put those people in trouble. They made a stupid decision, and they disgraced the United States by absolutely destroying the Capitol, and I can't have any patience.
It sounds like your concerns were not alleviated.
But let me be very clear, though. Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining the one area that I think he's probably right, that there were some people that were over-prosecuted. But there were some, 200 or 300 of them, that should have never gotten a pardon, and he agreed with that. But the disagreement there had more to do. If Mr. Martin were being put forth as a U.S. attorney for any district except the district where January 6th happened, the protest happened, I'd probably support him, but not in this district.
When you say he's not being advanced.
So that right there, he says if this were any other district, this is what I said during the interview, any other district other than this one, he'd probably get in. I'd probably vote for him. That right there tells you that Tillis knows he is qualified. But as we went through on the show last night on Only Lands, and there's more to this. The district attorney of DC is such an important position, and they're probably going to fight every one of Trump's nominees, if we're being totally honest. Like, we're going to see the same situation unfold time and time again. I don't know what it's going to take to overcome it. I don't have the answer here. Maybe a recess appointment or something. But if I was guessing, what I think is going to happen next is they're obviously not going to vote on him. Trump is going to have to withdraw his nomination and put in somebody else as acting until they get somebody through. Because we can't leave it to the District Court of DC to pick the next interim person until somebody gets put in. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, there's a whole story out there. I was going to go through that. These GOP senators are fighting Trump's agenda. They ride the coattails of Trump. They support him when they need to for the social media clicks, the social media influencers. They're no better than the DC Dranos of the world. They support Trump just enough to be relevant and important, and then when it matters, they work against him. It's terrible. We got the conclave starting today. New pope in the waiting, in the works. Hopefully we don't get a hermaphrodite like the movie Conclave. But yeah, who knows? I think 133 voting could take it. We have no idea how long it'll take. I think they vote one time today, and then it's like 4 times a day until we get one. So we'll see what happens. There's some Fed stuff I was going to get into because the Fed's meeting today. They're choosing between saving jobs and fighting inflation. It's expected, the most likely scenario is that the Fed will announce Wednesday that it is holding its benchmark lending rate steady at a range of 4.25% to 4.5%, extending a pause that began in January. And I haven't heard anything on whether or not they've released the announcements yet. So this came out of committee today. They are approving the sale of public lands to help finance the mega bill. I didn't really get a chance to ask Representative Cloud about the mega bill, but I do have who do I have on tomorrow? Hold on, let me double check. I have Rep Harrington tomorrow. So maybe I can do another. I'm going to ask him why we should be paying our taxes. But yeah, so they are going to be selling public lands, I believe, to gas and oil companies. So that is interesting. Still moving back and forth with that. The big, beautiful package. We got the victory parade going on this week in Russia. They revealed which leaders are going to be there. Xi Jinping, Luiz Lula da Silva from Brazil. We got Serbia's President Vučić, Venezuela's Maduro, Egypt's El Sisi, Slovakia's Fico. I think that's it. All the big ones. There was an interesting story that came out overnight. Apparently, all these world leaders are traveling there today, and there were a bunch of drones that got sent from Ukraine, like 6 of them that had to be shot down. So much for that ceasefire. But then there's this. So I found this interesting. We have Joe Biden did one of his first interviews in a while, and he comes out saying, Trump is appeasing Putin. That's not who we are. Talking about, I'll just read it. Joe Biden has accused Donald Trump of appeasing Russia by pressuring Ukraine to give up its territory in his first interview since leaving the White House. The former U.S. president said that Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, believes Ukraine is part of Russia and that anybody that thinks he's going to stop if Ukrainian territory is conceded as part of a peace deal is just foolish. Asked by the BBC about the Trump administration's suggestion that Kyiv should give up territory to end the war, Mr. Biden said it's modern-day appeasement. And then, kind of in a similar vein, we got J.D. Vance essentially saying the same thing. I know it's not exactly, but it's the same vibes here. Vance says Russia asking for too much to end the war with Ukraine. J.D. Vance said Wednesday that Russia is asking for too much to end its war with Ukraine, underscoring new frustrations in the Trump White House over its efforts to court Moscow on peace talks. He's speaking with Munich leaders in Washington. He said that the U.S. is focusing on a longer-term settlement since Russia has rejected the U.S. call for a 30-day ceasefire. They said because it's not in their strategic interest, essentially. but he stressed that Russia is likely to have to make concessions, a sign that the Trump administration is willing to get more aggressive with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is his quote. The Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much. So now J.D. Vance is basically saying we need to appease Russia less. And Joe Biden just said that Trump is appeasing Putin. And I haven't heard Trump speak this way yet. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Just similar talking points from the VP and the former president. That's kind of awkward. We'll keep going here. Trump is heading to Saudi Arabia this week. And I have a lot of like Israel, Saudi Arabia stuff going on, because remember yesterday we played that clip from when Trump was meeting with Carney of Canada. He said there's this huge announcement coming, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But while he's going up to meet with them, he's going to rename the Persian Gulf. And so it's like, I don't know who, like, how, why does Trump have the like authority to just rename anything anywhere? Like, it's kind of badass. I wish I had that power. But President Trump is expected to announce during his upcoming trip to Saudi Arabia that the United States will officially begin referring to the Persian Gulf as the Arabian Gulf, or the Gulf of Arabia. The shift aligns with longstanding pressure from Arab nations, which have advocated for a rebranding of the body of water that borders southern Iran. Iran, meanwhile, has staunchly defended the historical name, which dates back to the 16th century. This is it's just great. It's not like a body of water that's directly attached to the United States, yet he is going to rename it anyway. So I thought that was funny. But okay, a couple things from yesterday. So, and I'm sure Ghost is going to go over this on Friday if he hasn't already. I should just have him on sometime this week to talk about it, but it's kind of a busy week. But Israel says that they were blindsided by Trump's Houthi announcement. So yesterday during the Carney meeting, again, Trump said, "Yeah, we're gonna be done bombing the Houthis because they said they're gonna be done bombing our ships." Apparently, Israel had no idea he was going to do that. And then shortly after that is when he made like the little quote, we're going to have this huge announcement. And I don't know, there's speculation it could either be Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, goes to base Patrick Henry, and I personally feel this way too. It's going to be probably Iran, because the timing of that is it's very interesting. And there's also another story. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. We'll do this one first. Could Saudi Arabia be the next piece of the puzzle? He's returned to the Middle East this week. Saudi Arabia has moved closer to Iran. That's notable. The war in Gaza, and by extension, Israel's existential battle with Iran continues, and U.S. influence in the region is less certain. The question now is whether Saudi Arabia will take the next step or whether that moment has passed. These are the countries already in there. The UAE, which I think it's interesting that the UAE is currently helping to mediate talks between Israel and Syria. I think that's notable. But yeah, I think it's going to be Iran joining the Abraham Accords. But then also in what Trump said when he was announcing Witkoff, and I should maybe just play that clip. Trump, Witkoff, and Iran. Let's see what comes up here. If I got that video. If not, I'm not going to spend too much time looking. Yeah, I don't have the video readily available, so I'm just going to skip it. But he said he made it sound like it was more directly to impact us here in America, and so I don't know if it's something completely different. I don't know, but I'm just kind of playing around with some of these stories. But then there's also this: the U.S. proposes temporary administration to oversee post-war Gaza. So yesterday, Israel says like, "Hey, we're going to go in and take over Gaza." Essentially, the U.S. is like, maybe we should oversee that. The United States and Israel discussed the possibility of Washington leading a temporary post-war administration of Gaza, according to 5 people familiar with the matter. Could be totally fake news, but the high-level consultations have centered around a transitional government headed by a U.S. official that would oversee Gaza until it had been demilitarized and stabilized, and a viable Palestinian administration had emerged, the sources said. This is like no different than what they did in Iraq, isn't it? And they were only able to pull it off for like a year before they were like an occupying force, which I know we don't want to be. At least I don't want to be. So we'll see what happens. I did think it was interesting during that interview that with Cloud that he got into Federalist 78, because this morning I read this post. Donald Trump, our court system is not letting me do the job I was elected to do. Activist judges must let the Trump administration deport murderers and other criminals who have come into our country illegally without delay. He's like, why is he asking for permission? I went and read Federalist 78 this morning and I posted about it. But these are the quotes. Like, I don't think Trump needs to listen to any of these judges, even all the way up to the Supreme Court. I'm going to read these lines here and you'll see what I'm saying. Whoever attentively considers the different departments of power must perceive that in a government in which they are separated from each other, the judiciary, from the nature of its functions, will always be the least dangerous to the political rights of the Constitution because it will be least in a capacity to annoy or injure them. The judiciary, on the contrary, has no influence over either the sword or the purse, no direction either of the strength or of the wealth of society, and can take no active resolution whatever. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment, and must ultimately depend upon the aid of the executive arm, even for the efficacy of its judgments. That's what I said during the interview. They can't enforce anything unless, essentially, the executive branch agrees with their rulings. And so Trump is like playing this weird, flirtatious game with the courts, like pretending like what they say matters to him. And I don't know why. I mean, I could speculate as to why. You know, maybe he just wants enough people to like, hey, stop doing this. Like, what are you doing? Just do it. Maybe he wants us to demand it. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. But he certainly does not need the courts to implement his agenda. There is no enforcement mechanism. And as Cloud said, they're the weakest of the three departments. But yeah, Federalist 78, I would encourage you guys to go read it. It's a good one, especially in light of recent events and what we're going through like right now with all the stuff the judicial branch is doing to try to intervene in Trump's agenda. I would recommend you do that. And Ash too, by the way, if you're in the chat, you can hop on here because I do have a few more stories I'm going to run through, but we can get to what you wanted to talk about real quick at the end. I believe I'm going to have time because I'm going pretty fast here. Washington Post, Newsom asked Trump to work together on $7.5 billion Hollywood tax credit. This comes after Trump called for the tariffs on the films made overseas. And so, hey, maybe Trump and Newsom are going to bro out a little bit and save Hollywood. Isn't that a weird thing to think? But maybe they should just like lower their taxes generally. That's a good idea. NASA is planning to go to Mars in a surprise shift. NASA may launch rockets to Mars next year because apparently they got $1 billion in extra funding. Ridiculous. OpenAI retreats from restructuring plan, nonprofit to retain control. I feel like Musk basically did this. Musk forced them into doing this by offering to acquire it. So I'm not going to read the details of it. You can find it on badlandsmedia.tv under our news, but it's newsworthy because he was trying to take it to a for-profit model. Musk intervenes, starts calling him out on Twitter, offers to buy it for a ridiculous amount of money, and then now they're not doing it anymore. And yeah, I think that's it. Ash, you're here. I want you to enlighten us with what you got. How's it going?
Good. Great job, by the way. That was awesome. It was so worth waiting through all of the cancellations because that interview was awesome. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Lauren Boebert is my congresswoman, and she came out yesterday and she's written a letter saying, free Tina Peters. It's really, really important that we free Tina Peters. Now, Lauren Boebert is my congresswoman now, but she was Tina Peters' congresswoman prior. Folks will remember she moved districts from CD3 to CD4 in the last election. And I wrote yesterday, didn't have Lauren Boebert calling for the release of Tina Peters on my bingo card. The reason for that is Lauren Boebert has been silent about Tina Peters and the entire crucible going back to August of 2021 when her office was raided. In July of 2022, Tina Peters went to the National Sheriff's conference thing in Nevada, and she had this to say.
Let me pull that up.
Tell me when to hit play.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
All these other things. And you know what? You know who else met him? So he did the He did the image on a Sunday, and it was not in the middle of the night. It was in the afternoon after his flight got in. Monday night, he was with me, Sharona, one of our candidates for city council, for commissioner, and Lauren Boebert. No, don't clap for her. Do not clap for her. I went up to her and I said, Lauren, I need your support. She's bristled up and she says, when all this started coming down, she says, I support all my constituents. Have you heard her say anything about elections or elections security? Have you?
And no, the answer is we have not heard her say anything about elections or election security or Tina Peters or the weaponization of government or the Mesa image reports or any of it. But what Tina says there is that the night that Conan Hayes took the images, Lauren was there in a meeting with all of them, ostensibly aware of what was going on. And when the raid happened, Tina went to her and was like, I need your support. She's like, well, I support all my constituents, but nothing, crickets, no support. Lauren being there she's a material witness. And the state's 3 of the charges against Tina, and she was acquitted on these because it came out at trial that the guy was lying. But 3 of the charges were about identity theft. Felony charges on identity theft that Tina Peters stole this guy's identity. Lauren Boebert is a material witness to that fact. It's not just why hasn't she spoken out as Lauren's congresswoman. It's why didn't she dispute the state's allegations against Tina in the run-up to the trial, at the trial, after the trial? Never. Silent. It's only now that President Trump has said free Tina Peters that people are finding a spine to speak about it. But for Lauren Boebert, it's a trickier question because she actually had knowledge of this and just sat on it.
So she was literally there, and she wasn't like called to trial, like as a witness. Like, why didn't Tina call her as a trial? Has she ever even addressed the allegation that she was a witness?
She didn't. And you know what's interesting about that is that at the time that happened in July of 2022, I clipped it. I put it up. I was on Telegram at the time. But even the local media here, who, we're told hates Lauren Boebert, even the local media here didn't cover that allegation. Tina got in trouble for speaking at that conference because she left the state. That's the only thing people covered, is that Tina left the state in defiance of a court order, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody said anything about the allegation. And Lauren Boebert just ignored it. She's never addressed it.
Yeah, the one interesting thing about the thing she posted anyway, because she posted this, like, free Tina Peters now. This letter that she wrote was dated March 21st. So, I mean, it was before, it was before Trump made the big post.
Fair.
But still, it's not like where have you been? She's been in jail since when? Like 2024, early 2024, wasn't it?
October 3rd of 2024, she was taken right into custody.
That's right. That's
sentencing. Right. Yeah. And this letter goes through that the sentencing is unfair. It doesn't go through any of the, the election security issues. It doesn't touch on, that Tina Peters is a political prisoner, not really in any meaningful way. And that's compounded by the fact that Lauren Boebert has personal knowledge. She's a material witness to the acts for which Tina Peters is now sitting in prison.
Yeah, I mean, it says here, I'm writing to request that you commence an investigation into potential violations of the civil rights of her, having to do. Yeah, it doesn't have anything to really do with election stuff.
Yeah,
this is insane. So she's another social media influencer.
But she's Patriot Barbie. I mean, you guys will remember when she carried her gun everywhere and that was her thing, and she was going to take on Nancy Pelosi, and then all of a sudden she wasn't carrying her gun anymore because I think she couldn't be on a committee or something. So it's all personal political calculus. But this is particularly gross because Tina Peters has been going through this since August of 2021, and now it's May of 2025, and Lauren Boebert, who had personal knowledge of what went down in Mesa County, is now finding the balls to speak about it.
Yeah, somebody needs to ask her that question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we should try to get her on Badlands. We should try to get her on this show.
Yeah,
but I wonder,
we should get her on this show.
I wonder if I'll ever get a congressman again. I do have Harrington tomorrow, but start asking them tough questions.
I think he enjoyed that interview. I think the first question about elections kind of threw him. I don't think he was expecting that, but he settled in and got comfortable, and you guys had a great exchange. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was good too. It was fun. But anyway, anything else you want to talk about? I got like 3 more minutes.
No, you do have a bunch of rants. You should go through those.
Oh, do I? Okay, I'll do that then.
I'll
Well,
see
thank
you
you,
guys
Ash.
later. Yeah, bye.
I will go through rants then, I guess. And then we'll get you guys out of here a little bit early. I went through those stories a little too fast. It's not a bunch of rants, Ash. It's like 3 or 4, unless I'm missing some. Joanne Coach says, excellent interview. Great questions asked respectfully. So good. Thank you. 12 Indie Boy, best question ever. Why am I paying my taxes? Rep Cloud answered just like I would on a podcast. Can't wait to watch again and hear what your thoughts are. Ash is fire in the chat. And then, yeah, thank you, Ty. Then Dr. Name Only, my husband met Michael Cloud, our rep, and asked him if I could meet with him to discuss tactical civics. And he agreed. That's great. Hopefully it will be in the next few months. Yeah, I still need to go through that. I have my kids through Monday, and then next week I'm going to sit down and go through what you sent. So I appreciate the rants, guys. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. I will be back on the Power Hour tonight, 10:30 Eastern. Should be a good show. And other than that, I'll be back again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. So you guys have a great rest of your day. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you hit the thumbs up and share this show around. And yeah, see you guys later.
Let's get started.
That's what she said.
Oh, that's real good.